Yeah. No, it's not sharing. And where's the slide? Okay, good. You just messed up. Can we all see it? Sorry. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, good. I do apologize, everyone. So we start this and I hand over to Jonathan to take it from here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. Before I go into details, I'll just say you've been doing an amazing work from, helping people with their registration. And I understand you have scheme for when people come to the UK, they can get very affordable accommodation to progress their career. So I'm very excited to talk about finding jobs in an oversaturated landscape, in the UK landscape. So I think one of the things that it's important for probably everyone attending is the UK is constantly changing like the UK weather. And so most of our people maybe are not used to this, but the UK keeps changing based on what they need. And one of the things is if you would pursue a career here or probably anywhere else as there's competition, this is something that you have to have at the back of your mind. I wouldn't go into, I think Mr. BaloSegha has introduced me very kindly. I'll probably look at the outline, if that's okay, for the talk.
Okay, just bear me 1 moment.
Yes, so I think a couple of things we need to talk about today is going to be outlined here. But whilst you're listening, I think it's worthwhile if in the chat section you can say, for instance, where you are now, what role you're doing, just a bit of context, and then we can, have conversation around probably what is more tailored to your situation. So the current state of the UK medical job market has changed. The UK is, unlike most countries, is publicly funded job market, and the majority of the jobs are hosted, at least for medical doctors, within the NHS. And we'll go into details about the NHS. Now, something has become more prominent now than it is, or at least more prominent, obviously. So the term some of you might have heard, UKMG versus IMGs. So IMGs is a very old term that we know of for a very long time. UKMGs just simply means UK medical graduates. Now there's a perceived competition that's been created, especially when it comes for training roles. Part of it is political, part of it is misunderstanding, but that has come forefront. And then this again is influenced by the current UK government of states. So basically, the Labour Party does it differently, the Conservative does it differently. My own advice from a political point of view, I think the Labour Party is probably more pro-NHS and things like that. So, but there's another thing that we must talk about, which is what is the skill gap that people have, and regardless of what country you're coming from, there's a skill gap that we've known of for a very long time in terms of what IMGs have. Now, when we talk about skill gap, it's not about just knowledge. Most times when people come in, they probably have knowledge. Medicine is medicine, but the NHS is a matrix on its own. It's a complex organization, and that's the skill gaps. What are some of the useful tips? Then how about non-NHS roles? Are there roles outside the NHS that you can pursue as a doctor? And then, of course, entrepreneurship, which is something we probably don't do as much. I'll do a bit of Q&A. I think that would be the outline. If you can go to the next slide, please. So here I will talk about the current state of the UK medical job market. Now, this is important to understand. Like many of us are aware, UK, just like any country, has the doctors' density and distribution. Now, if you look at the UK, specifically, this looked at England and the number of doctors per 1,000. You would quickly realize that for the OECD, that's the Organization of Economic Countries around EU nations, you quickly realize that the average is 3.7. That for England is 2.9. If you compare Germany, which has a similar economy like the UK, that is 4.3. Now, why is this important to you? It tells you the amount of responsibility that you probably would take if you end up in a UK hospital. So this means generally you would come to work in a system where it's going to be fairly pressured. If you've worked in both Nigeria and here, the rough guide that I can give you is most UK hospitals are at least 5 to 10 times busier than any of the federal or state hospitals you've worked in. So that's one. The second thing is England alone needs about 50,000 additional FTEs. Now, there's a complex reason why this is not being filled up, but these jobs do exist. Now, some of it is political. So there is going to still be open roles in the NHS. However, the changes now means that it's more and more difficult for someone abroad to get it. Yeah, so going further, we can go to the next slide, please. So going further, the distribution of doctors also would vary, isn't it? And as you can see, what you would find is excluding London, the distribution is not as balanced. And for most people coming from overseas, generally you would go to the place where the job is available, isn't it? And you're more likely to get a job outside London, where probably there's not a high amount of doctors within the system that they can hire. So that's one of the things. So that means if you work in these regions, you may also find that you may be under pressure. So that's the other thing to think about. Now, there is a high amount of vacancy, like I've said, across. However, more recently, there's a nationalist or populist sort of politics, which means there is generally a lower and lower drive for hiring IMGs. So what I say to people now is you probably need to come with a bit much more than it used to be. And we'll talk you through that much more, and which is standing out. Next slide, please. So this is very useful as sort of a career dichotomy. Most people, in my experience, that come to the UK probably come as maybe an afterthought, plan B or plan C. And so what you would find is, except a small number of people from overseas, whether it's Nigeria or India or wherever, a very small number of people come within the first 2 years. So that means most people will come when they are a bit advanced. So the typical UK pathway is you do foundation year of about 2 years. In Nigeria, that's about a year. You can argue that the NYSC is a foundation year as well. And then you go into something like core training, which could be medicine or whatever you want to do, which is another 2 years, which is an SHO post, which is generally more like this junior residency in Nigeria. And then you move into the higher training. Some professions do run through, like emergency medicine. I think radiology does that. Eventually, in the UK, you need a roughly, from when you finish medical school, continuous training of any time for specialty posts, anything between 9 to 13 years to become a fellow in whatever. to have the CCT, which is Certificate of Completion of Training, which makes you eligible for a substantive or local consultant post. For most people coming from abroad, it's very likely that you are unlikely to enter this program. A small number do get into the foundation program from overseas. But I will talk about the area where, for instance, they are lacking people. In terms of the foundation and the core training, there's probably enough people from within. So most people will take these other non-training equivalents. So people can come as junior clinical fellows or senior clinical fellow, which is like the mirror of the core training. So when, depending on what experience you have with the NHS, people at varying grades in their career could take a junior clinical fellow, SHO, then step up to a senior clinical fellow, and then that way they could take an alternative route to being a consultant. The senior clinical fellow is roughly similar to a specialty doctor role. However, the specialty doctor role is more adapted, like what you have is like the senior medical officer or the principal medical officer in Nigerian terminology. So this is someone that is more streamlined, more likely have a permanent role, and is likely going to remain in that profession and that hospital for a long time. With either roles, you can, get into being a consultant. And of course, there's the GP. Training to become a GP takes about 3 years, and that's very popular with our people. So this is the breakdown roughly of what the UK looks like, and it's helpful to understand, for instance, your skill set, which does it matches with the most, and so that you can balance your job search that way. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so one of the, I don't know whether it's worrying or good, interestingly, the BMA, which represents both UK trained doctors and overseas trained doctors, have these committees of, non-consultants. Basically, the BMA Resident Doctors Committee is like ARD in Nigeria. So what they've done is they've said, look, we've looked at the competition ratios and we've done a political process as a subcommittee. And what we want to argue now is that we should be prioritized. This has not typically been the case with the UK. It used to be the rule in the UK like a very long time ago, when they had something called the resident labor market test. But that was abolished in, I believe, the early 2000s, where recruitment now for UK businesses and hospitals or anything is done solely based on performance. So what the UK trained doctors have said is they should be prioritized, and the competition should be more softer for them. So they get into training while the IMGs getting to do, other non-training jobs. So they formally created a policy, which is a BMA policy. It's not a government policy. And for that reason, I personally canceled my BMA membership, and I've joined the HCSA because it felt I had conflict of interest, being part of BMA when, a section of it had policies that were negative against me. So this is one policy to be aware of. The policy has made the job search more difficult for.
As of the time I called, John Paul, I was around today. I'm still not fully ready. John Paul never go back to me around 4. So by that time, my kids were already forced. Yeah, let's put them to sleep.
I think we have a bit of noise on the background.
But it's okay.
Yes, so this policy is very important to just be aware of, because it's sort of making it a bit more stiff for people to progress and get into consultant post via the training route, which is a bit more guaranteed, or which is more guaranteed compared to the portfolio route. So they've gotten some sort of details about when they want it to start. Interestingly, if you read it, they themselves said and if you ask me, yeah, IMDs are just, of course, that's a political point. Main aim, I put it in this place that you are aware. So part of these filters down to the hospital that you'll be working in. You'll see UK trained graduates probably, acting this way. So I think I'll go to the next slide, please. Yes, so this is just from LinkedIn, just to bring the point that it's quite a saturated market. And you can see the individual dear Saad Makbul, I believe is a doctor in Pakistan. And I'll read what he wrote. The title of his LinkedIn post was clearly there, IMG doctors struggling for jobs in the UK. And he has said since the start of 2025, 3,676 international doctors have passed the GMC registration process and are ready to work in the UK. But here is the problem. Out of that number, only 123 have actually secured a job. Now, if you do some maths, that's somewhere around 3%. Now, some people have argued that now, if there's this little job, that means registration to job, securing a job, why is the GMC, still pushing for these exams? Why is the GMC, for instance, why does the GMC has exam centers scattered all over the world? However, one of the things we should know is the GMC is not an employment body. The GMC is simply doing its job. The GMC is a licensure body, you get, and therefore medicine is international now. Therefore, all the GMC is doing is offer the opportunity to get licensed, just like majority of the medical licensing body across the world. Now, the other thing is he talked about the number that are still searching for the jobs. Now, if you look at the numbers in the pool, that means when at application level, that means when you type and apply for one role, you may need to be filtered with around 500 people or 1,000 people. Generally, the rules of interview, like anyone that's been in interview panels would know, the typical rule is you invite odd numbers. So usually, when you make it to interview, it's either 3 of you or 5 of you, because it's odd numbers. So generally, so you are competing with 500 to 1,000 CVs. Now you need to be able to find yourself in 3 to 5 people that are brought into the interview. And then at the interview, you need to try and convince the panel that you are the best candidate for the job. So it's quite a tall order. And then you have the cost of PLAB, for instance, the cost of traveling here. Because for you to do PLAB 2, you have to physically come to the UK and go to Manchester, stay in accommodation and all of the related costs. Now that's from an IMG outside the country. Now Daniel Platt is director of one of the biggest agencies for the NHS. And he's British, he's white, he's been here, he's born here. So he had the same complaint. Looking at, so now he said over 2,000 doctors left the UK register in 2003 to practice abroad. That's a 25 increase from the previous year. This is no great surprise. So he's talking about, you know, doctors are leaving the UK, going elsewhere. So what this says is, as people are complaining, you know, people are going elsewhere. So it's going to be a continuous vacancy situation. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what have I done to try and put myself in a position whereby, you know, I can be able to get a role and then start my career? So you talked about the CCT route, talked about the Caesar route and all of those. Next slide, please. So what is this gap? So I'll spend a bit of more details here because I think this is probably the key for those that would adapt and those that may struggle. So I think the first thing is, if you are coming to work in the UK, you need to just keep thinking NHS, NHS, NHS. So you need to have specific NHS knowledge and adaptation. Now, the first issue people have is familiarity. So if I were to, let's say, ask people attending, you know, to, for instance, explain how the NHS is structured, you know, how does an NHS hospital work? How does the UK healthcare system works? Is a really good starting point. What is the role of primary care? What is the role? How is the emergency department structured? How is secondary care structured? You know, how are the district hospitals structured? How was NHS funding modeled? So these are things that you need to start getting familiar. How does it work in the devolved nations? You know, which was the role of the commissioning trust? You know, what's the role of the board? How is a UK NHS hospital? What's the job of the clinical lead? What's the job of the managers? It's very important to start to understand the theory of these and then the practical. A lot of people coming from overseas take this for granted, and therefore when you come in, it can be a lot to take in a very short time. For instance, what's the relationship in the NHS? You know, the dichotomy between doctors and nurses, you know, and the how seniority is managed. So the next is cultural differences. So roughly, some of the most, okay, I think let's maybe be a bit practical. Who can give me some examples of cultural differences between the UK and, for instance, Nigeria when interacting with a patient or a colleague? What are some cultural differences? Any volunteers? Anyone wants to volunteer to give us? So, okay, yes, we have someone volunteering, I think, Balogun. Yes, please you can put your mic on and then just tell me some differences and how that you think in with colleagues and patients.
Thank you for the beautiful presentation so far. When I got into the UK, the first thing that shocked me was the amount of thank you people say. And even though I was doing my work very well, the first time they asked one of the matrons to say, how have you seen this, our new doctor? Oh, it's very nice. It's done the job. It's quite pleasant, but you should learn to say more thank you. Right. I thought we all came to work to do our work. So in UK, you send someone to do his job, you say thank you. And another thing I found was that um, I'm I make my statement really clear and short. So if you ask me to do something, if I cannot, I'll just say no or yes. They don't like it in the UK. So you have to start beating about the bush. How I would have done it. However, I'm doing this. They're still telling you no in a way. So those are the few things that were shocker, and I quickly just learned the UK system. The UK system perambulates a lot. Also, when I was handing over, I was always direct. Our patient came in with this diagnosis, and this is what we've done. For this UK people, they'll put so many things. Then I walked to the place, then the place was upside down, then this, then eventually they tell you the diagnosis. I think they just like to patch things up. So you just have to play the game also. Thank you.
Amazing. So that's some interesting cultural difference. So it's a lot of dancing around. It's not a culture where direct no is popular. So if you were like, you can't take something, well, we had an extremely busy night, we were knackered, then the whole place, we were awake all through. Oh, I would have loved to help with these. I just need to get, so that's one of the cultural difference. Anyone able to share any more? Or you don't have to have worked in the UK. Or you can tell us what you think, in terms of cultural differences. Anyone? Because I think this is something I'll talk about called the hidden curriculum, which is a really important aspect that people tend to struggle with. Any other person? I think let's hear a bit from those that are attending, especially if you've not worked in the UK, because these are some of the key. Yes, Stephen, please.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the things that stood out to me was how people that treat each other in Nigeria were very like only the opposite respects. So it's usually not enough for you to just respect your senior associate. You have to say sir, you have to it's doctor in front side. When I do about the machine, most people are possible meetings and start interactions. So FIT as if I'm great by say Nigeria, I would be able to talk to my consultant and that. So I did that sort of big as I have just I met a Nigerian that also embassy also like I love my time. But in Nigeria, yes, so I think our first thing is finance.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So again, one of the things to be aware of, UK is not, if you're coming from Nigeria, there's no, the seniority. You don't have to refer to anyone as sir or ma routinely. There's also a popular culture of someone can call you by your first name. There's the use of formal titles, for instance, like people can say Mr. Ajam or Jonathan, but it's more popular that people would refer you with your first name, and the hierarchy is not made obvious in plain sight. So hierarchy is more from a formal setting, like who decide what. Yeah, like it's already formalized. But like where, for instance, you can't speak to a consultant or you have to call consultant sir or professor sir. None of that is it's something that is popular here. The medical students can address you, they can ask your name, they can talk to you almost like a peer. Of course, they can't approve the things you can approve. So, which is again another thing that it can be a cultural shock. So navigating that needs a different skill. So for instance, if you were to come from Nigeria and have a consultant post, yeah, they can, the way your registrars will speak to you and the way your registrars will speak to you when you are in Nigeria is different. Doing the way the medical students, so the culture of seniority and respect and formality is not very big. I think this is part of the UK communication as well. Again, UK communication, to say the least, is very indirect. So what I would say to most people is when you come in, especially for social communication, take your time and look at the pattern. I'll give people some specific advice. One, when you come to the UK, don't start telling them about your family problems at all, at work. This is my own recommendation. Why it's okay, you can do that in Nigeria. Don't tell them about your wife, don't tell them about your child. UK communication, when you need something, they are very big with the books. So what that means is, if you need, especially if you are new, if you need leave, go through the process. Some people come with informality approach, which can be quite okay in Nigeria. If you are new, go, if the book says, okay, you request it this way and that way. The second thing is, whenever you can, when you are communicating, especially for formal things, use a channel that is generally, you can go back and say. So if you are supposed to request something by an email, when you have a verbal conversation with someone, go back and write them an email and summarize and say, I think we discussed this and that. I just want to check if, from your recollection, that is that. So a lot of people new to the UK take this for granted. And sometimes when things get messy, your recollection and that of the person varies. Things about, for instance, training needs, what was advised, what was discussed. The other thing, understand the escalation channels. So if you are working in NHS, when you come in, try and understand the bullying policy, bullying and harassment policy, for instance. You don't need to wait until there's a situation. Try and understand the safeguarding policy and what you do in your own trust. Some of it may be DATEX. There's something called the DATEX system. So try and understand, the way you escalate things up, because generally in the UK, I can tell you, if something is written down, especially formally, it's safer for you to believe it rather than believe what you and someone discussed. So that's part of the communication. So it's different, especially when you're coming from overseas. So for communication, understand that UK people are not very direct. I wouldn't recommend you allowing people know so much about what's going on. Now, this is the interesting part. The UK would encourage you to be very open, talk about anything. Hello? But my recommendation is, except is necessary, don't do it. So that you don't end up having so much about you that it's in the hands of your colleagues and they can use the way. Of course, if it's something that you need, absolutely, you're not well or something is impacting you and you need to apply for a certain type of leave or certain things, and that's necessary, to add that detail, then you need to do that formally. We'll go to induction and training. While we are here, does anyone want to talk about their induction experience for their first job, to tell us what they think? Was it sufficient? Was he organized? And things like that. Anyone? Again, you can be from outside Nigeria, even if it's, from outside the UK, even if it's just your experience in terms of when you did clinical attachment, because I'd like for the talk to be as much as 2 ways, as much as possible. Anyone? So generally, what we know about the data for induction and training is, one, induction doesn't seem to be sufficient, at least in the experience of many doctors that have come. So you would need way more than what's offered in the induction. The second thing about training in the UK, let me just say this now, there's the culture of them go hold your hand, or someone will hold you and carry you under their wings. Doesn't exist in the UK. It's not something. It's a lot of self-directed learning. So yes, is that easy? No. Coming to programs like this would help you, so that you quickly identify what direction you want to go, what skill you may need, and connect with people within the cycle, and then start getting support who to go to. Part of your knowledge comes from reading, from experience, from doing your job. So that's the thing. So induction is unlikely that you may get much, but there's again some mistake that people do. One of the things you should consider is during your interview, it's clear. It's very important for you to be clear and honest, and let them know how long of shadowing you may need. I know some of our people think that reduces their chance of getting the job. One of the things you need to know about the UK or any functional economy, if you say, I can, remove someone's head and replace it back, if that's something that is already happening, the assumption is people will believe that you can do that, and they will expect that from you. So one of the mistakes some people make, and I've seen them when they send me their CV, they list a lot of things that they can't do. And an interview is just so much. Nobody's going to be so specific. So skills and getting adapted to a system, my recommendation is, if you can negotiate for any time between 2 to 4 weeks, no matter your knowledge, no matter whether you can do the operation or not. Now, you can say, oh, a craniotomy in Lagos and a craniotomy in London is probably the same thing, but it's 2 different types of patients, 2 different ways you interact with anesthetists, 2 different ways you interact with nurses, 2 different ways the system is organized. So you coming to do your operation, your craniotomy, is just a small part of the care. And you are supposed to coordinate each of this care, and you are held responsible. You get. And so it's important to give yourself the time to be able to get used to the system. The other thing to be aware of in the UK system is there's a lot of accountability. If things goes wrong, there has to be blood. So someone is going to be held accountable, and so that's important to be aware of before you take a role. It's if you go and take a role, especially when you don't have the parts put together, you wouldn't take long. It will show, and you start struggling, and that would add to the problems already. What are some systemic problems in the NHS? Staff shortages is a common one. So you may wake up one morning, you guys are supposed to be 5 in a shift. You may end up being 4 of you, or you may end up being 3 of you. So have at the back of your mind that you may wake up one morning and realize that you are new, you are struggling to even do your work and, do it on time and go home. Now there's a bit of temporary increased workload. Yeah. And then there's pressure, increased workload, especially in the emergency department. Waiting times can be a lot. So you may go, when you work in ED especially, because it's one of the areas that's beginning to get a role for people coming new, there can be a lot of pressure and then tempers and then can be a very socially challenging thing. So it's good to be aware. Mental health problems is quite common in the country, and even for people new in the country, is new weather, is new food, is new everything. So you need to also take cognizance of your own mental health. Funding and resources varies via trust by trust. So what you find is while some trust things are very flexible, some other trust things are very tight. So let's quickly come to what you may have, if you're an early career doctor. One is confidence and independence. In the UK, the expectation is that you should be able to do your job as independently as possible. So tasks are quite apportioned by grade. They are very specific by grade. Now, in terms of confidence, part of it, of course, comes through the knowledge you've acquired, the exams you've passed, you're continuing to keep your knowledge in check. Independence, you really need to quickly pick the independent thing. Some trusts expect you to do most of your computer work yourself, do this, do that. And then in some trusts, especially with the SHO roles, you find out that you need to, in addition to your one specialty, you may end up covering 2 or 3. So for instance, if you have an SHO job in surgery, general surgery, during your on-call, you may cover urology or orthopedics, depending on the trust you are. So the other thing I think people don't negotiate, it goes back to what I said about the induction. Try and negotiate your job plans if you can. So understand what you are going to be doing where. It's very, very important. Anytime look at when you're applying for a job, look at what is written. In my experience, most times what is written in the job description is very similar to what you find. If you are uncomfortable with things in the job description, it's almost invariably that you would struggle with that role. For some roles like specialty doctors or registrar, you may be able to negotiate your job plan. Then try and have work-life balance. UK is not where you keep overdoing. It's not where you overdo locum. That's one. And it's not where you try and once you take a responsibility in the UK, it means whatever consequence comes with it is yours to deal with. So it's not where you take responsibilities without thinking through it. Again, it's not where you reject responsibility, you reject an offer without being polite. So it's not the easiest thing to do. So this is what we call the hidden curriculum. And in my experience, this is probably the most difficult thing to do. And what I tend to recommend, if you can afford, do a clinical attachment lasting up to 2 months. So you can pick, and in 2 different hospitals, so you can pick all of these, rigmarole, because it's something best learned, in the real setting. Next slide, please. We've taken so much time, but because this is So this is just telling you the difference about our funding. So it's important to understand the UK healthcare is funded taxpayers' money. Nigerian healthcare, the funding, I use Nigeria because that's where national. So, and then state government, it tells you again, access to the health. So the NHS hospitals are very accessible, never lack for patients. That's the thing. You always keep getting patients. Hospital almost busy, or you would have a decent number of patients, whether you're in primary care, secondary care, tertiary care. In terms of equipment, in my experience, the UK probably have everything you need to do your job. From the test, you may not be able to request all at all of the time. You know, there are labs are working in the NHS. CTs, you can get ready. In fact, we almost do routinely CT before we open anybody's abdomen, whether laparoscopically or whatever. So CTs are quite available. Investigation is not a challenge. Now and then they may write you a little letter, you know, this is the option rather than this. But in terms of infrastructure, it's available. Workforce is not straightforward the way it's described. So in Nigeria, most teaching hospitals or tertiary hospitals will have house officer up to, you know, consultant. Here, some of the hospitals, house officers would only work during the day. So house officers don't do calls. So sometimes on call is SHOs and the registrar. Consultants here, in my experience, at least in surgery, and I think in anesthesia, because almost all of the time the consultant anesthetist is available. So the consultant, your consultant, at least in surgery, they are very available. So it's again, when you take a job here, expect that, I believe here, probably at least for surgery, the more senior you are, the more probably you attend the hospital much more, which is, you know, at least if you look at the case in Nigeria, it's probably different. And here also, the more hands-on, the consultants are really quite hands-on with what's going on. You get, so that's some of the difference. Training, I think we've talked about the training. There's a lot of CPD opportunities to develop yourself. The difference here is most of it is self-directed learning. Most of the learning is self-directed. Nobody will sit you down and say they are moving stuff or there's a tutorial. Nobody will over-quiz you, you know, and tell you you're not reading. Nobody does that. Yeah, I have. So you need to be aware that you need to be quite self-directed and proactive, more you. Nobody may go, even if you ask, nobody will give you too much details on what to do and what not to do. So that's the difference. In Nigeria, you have more of the, maybe if you like, maternal or paternal sort of teaching, which is good in itself, but you may not have so much of that here. Standards, there's a lot of standard, there's a lot of guideline. UK practice is guidelines, so be careful of your opinion too much. Try and wrap whatever you want to do for your patients around what at least one of the UK recognized guidelines says. You know, here, ask people as well. You know, ask your consultant, ask your registrar, ask other registrars, you know, discuss. There's a lot of MDT thing going on if you want to take. Sometimes when we have a patient, I'll discuss with the med reg, you know, what do you think? We want to do this surgical procedure. Could you advise us in terms of can the patient this and that and that? So it's a very, you know, it's a system where everyone's voice is included. So you just don't say, oh, he's my patient, I'm the surgeon, I'd like to do liver transplant. No, the physicians, you know, you need to They will give you their input. Radiologists will give you their input. Nutritionist, the patient's relative, and all of that. So it's an IMDT. So it's a system where you need to be able to communicate your ideas with as many members of the team as possible. Medicines, like I said, is not an issue. Generally, you have most of the trust, they would use some form of electronic medical record or health record. In my experience, this is also the other problem. I don't know the word in Yoruba, but this is what Hausa people call masala. This is one of the problems, this electronic health record. Because I believe once you can learn to use this properly and quickly, you've solved your problem in the NHS by at least some 40%. Know where investigation is, where this, where letters, where that. So the electronic health record is one of the things you should be putting your eyes on. As you come into a trust, quickly find out what are they using. Where I was before, they used to use Senna. My current trust now, they use System C. You know, so workflow space. The more adept you are, they are very rich in clinical decision making. You can quickly look at the bloods for the patient, look at their scans, look at their history, look at what other of your colleagues have said. Emergency, like I said, is very busy, and it's really busy. So if you are going to work in ED, I recommend that if you are doing your attachment, even if you don't get an attachment in ED, preferably I advise that you get one, go there and see it for a couple of days so that you know what you are getting into. You'll be covered in terms of when you come to work in the UK in terms of health insurance. And then there's a lot of audits. So patient safety audits actually is very, very common and popular in UK hospitals. Nigerian settings, we don't really do them too much. Referral system is another place where it's very organized. So I'll break it down for you. So in the UK, at least in my experience in surgery, so if you are referring a patient in Nigeria, I'll give you an instance. So let's say we want to refer a patient from Kaduna to ABU. We'll just write a letter, give the patient goes there. That's not referral in the UK, at least not from a hospital setting. UK referral, you need to call the hospital that you're sending your patient to. They need to formally accept the patient and agree, have bed, and then you decide how your patient goes there, whether through an ambulance or not. So this is a very important point to be aware of. The second thing, generally, a lot of UK referrals in hospital happen over the phone. So most of us, like in Nigeria, you'll find, like, see this patient, you can go and review and decide to accept or not. Generally, in UK settings, when they give you the history and story over the phone, and you accept over the phone, you've taken responsibility for that patient. So if you are new, just be aware of this, you know? So before you say yes, you get, oftentimes this will be, you know, for those registrar and above. And it's, again, one of the areas where IMG get into quarrel and trouble. Yeah, this is where people raise their voice, get angry, and then this is where the UK subtlety. But there are few tricks around it. If it's too tricky for you, just say, sorry, I'll get back to you. I'll just discuss with my consultant, or let me just get some advice from my consultant, and then you get me. There's, again, another cheat code you can use. You can collect the patient's details and say, I'll have a look, however, I've not accepted. I need to discuss with my consultant or whatever. The way referral works here is different. So that's something people need to know. And then a lot of it will be over phone call during the call. I've not seen much of paper referral. We do electronic referral for cold cases. So you can refer to cardiology through the EMR, the electronic health record. So this is some of the things that you want to say, what do I need to unlearn? If you are coming from Nigeria, understand that seniority is not a big deal here. So please do not come to the UK and say, yes, ma, ma, no, ma, yes, sir, yes, sir. It's not a popular thing. The second thing, don't take it personal because, like, my name is Jonathan. If somebody calls me Mr. Aja or Jonathan, again, it's not all they shorten the name. Some will say John or Johnny, some that have, so don't take that. That's the culture here. Understand, if you want to say no, be diplomatic about it. Yeah. Secondly, again, UK, sometimes some things, if things are getting out of hand, first to report now incorrect. So this is something you need to be aware of. If things are getting out of hand, look at the process and formally raise it. Yeah. And then understand the system. Understand, for instance, every little thing there are few things about hospitals. When you come to get the job, understand how to bleep. I understand how to respond to a bleep. Quickly learn, does this hospital use phone? Does it use paging, bleeping system? Even the bleep has, how do I contact somebody through switchboard? When you want to contact somebody, quickly get the fine details, especially if you are a registrar, get the fine details and, use the SBAR format. You get, understand that nobody's going to hold your hand. Therefore, as you come in, decide, what do I need? This training, make a plan for it. They will give you some pointers here and there. Now and then, they may give you a very detailed input. Then also understand, if you are doing a field where imaging is key, start teaching yourself, how to improve your interpretation of CT, MRI. Like if you want to be a general surgery registrar, urology registrar, you need to be comfortable, at least get the rudimentary of interpreting abdominal CT and things like that, ultrasound, angiogram and things. So these are some of the, understand again, the patients here can be very demanding. Try and not be getting into, don't get caught up with their approach of things. Yeah. You can always say, again, know that here, saying sorry. In fact, we say sorry a lot in Nigeria, so it shouldn't be a problem. So you say sorry, sorry you feel this way. Sorry, I have to tell you this. Sorry, I need to speak to my my boss. Sorry, I'll get back to you on this and that and that. So those are this basic difference. Also understand the referral differences. I think I'll move to the next slide. So what are useful tips? I think we've really talked about the NHS system. So just to test people that are attending, I'm tempted to say, let me randomly pick on somebody, but can someone volunteer so that we can test our knowledge on the economics of the NHS system from political to the patients? So can I have maybe two volunteers so that we can, look at the NHS as a system of healthcare? Volunteers. This is yeah, good. Okay, so we have any volunteers, guys? We need to engage, guys. We need to engage so that we don't end up just pouring information that people, good. Stephen, you've spoken before. That's lovely. Who else? So I'll ask you a question, Stephen. Can you tell me how the NHS is funded? Basically. Hello, Stephen. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. How is the NHS funded from at a national level?
So the way I understand it, I
No,
think
no, you have to tell me the way it is. There's only one way, so tell me.
so I believe there's a particular amount that is being budgeted annually.
What is
that
the
is
NHS source of funding? There's just one answer to it.
from the government. From the government.
So NHS is funded through general taxation, primary funding. Then you can have supplementary funding through budgeting. Now, while we are here, when you say general taxation, you pay sort of two forms of tax, if you like, in the UK. You pay your regular tax and you pay national insurance. Is there anyone that knows, can tell me what national insurance pays for and what your regular tax pays for? So one of the things that taxation pays for is the NHS, the military, most of the national things. Now, your national insurance will pay for things like police, parks, school, and that's why you have schools that is free in the UK. So in the UK, you pay something like probably 3 tax. So you pay regular tax like everybody. I won't go into the details of that. You pay national insurance that covers this. In addition, it's going to pay you a pension when you retire. Yeah? When you work in the NHS and you opt into pension, you're going to have an NHS pension. So that's the now the amount of money that is given to the 4 nations is calculated through, I think, the Bennett's formula, but that's more of health economics. Then the amount of money given to each trust is also calculated specifically, and there's a complex way around it. Each trust will have like a commissioning body. Now, the way the NHS manage their hospital is very integrated, and I explain it to you. So in Lagos, is there anyone from Lagos that is here? Anybody from Lagos? There has to be. Anyway, in Lagos, you have, I think, 4 or 3 federal hospitals, isn't it? You have the University of Lagos Teaching Hospital. Then you have the National Orthopedics Hospital, Igbobi. Then you have the, I think, Federal Medical Center, Ebuta-Metta, and then you have the Federal Neuropsychiatry Hospital. In the UK, these 4 hospitals are likely going to be integrated in one way or the other so that they have similar management. The second thing is, in Lagos, for instance, the University Teaching Hospital have its own management doing its thing. Ibobi has its own management doing its thing. FMC has its own. Neuropsychiatry have its own. Here, they would coordinate those cares and these hospitals will formally communicate. So most UK hospitals would have multiple sites, either at district level or secondary care. So that's a few things to understand. So when you get a job, some of our people may be surprised that they may work in more than one hospital. Like I work in 2 hospitals, and in fact, when you are a consultant, you may end up working in 3. So, but even at SHO, you may work in 1, 2, or 3 hospitals. In terms of GMC registration, I don't think we need to talk too much about it. So you can use PLAB, which is the most popular route. They call it UKMLA now. You can also use the specialist qualification route. MRCS, MRCP, MRCOG, MRC, CPA, MRC in psychiatry, all of those you can use. You can use something called the GMC sponsored route, which is diminishing more and more now, where the trust sponsors you or the Royal College sponsors you. So those are some of the things. The next is you need to prepare a UK style CV. What I find, when people say to me, I've been struggling to get a job in the UK, and I say, send your CV, let me see. And what you find is they send me their track job CV, which I find very funny. In fact, I find it a waste of my time, really. Of course, I don't tell them. So it's very important at every stage in your career, you have a CV. Your CV does two things. It tells you what you've achieved. It tells you what you could achieve. It tells you what to plan for in the future. So what you've achieved, it tells you. Where you want to go, you can see the difference. So your CV is like a vetting process for you. So you should be able to now update it. It's like it's a career meter, so to speak. So you must have a UK style CV. The second mistake I see is when some people send me their CV, it becomes clear to me that they don't understand the difference between what is a university degree, what is a university diploma, and what is a postgraduate certificate. You see them putting short courses where degrees should be put. Yeah? You see them also putting Royal College qualifications, they mix them up. So while, of course, what's the name? Track job will help you with this. There are times, in fact, when you are quite skilled, you may speak with, when you network properly, you may meet a UK consultant, he'll be like, how about you send me your CV? And if I'm a consultant and you send me a CV and I want to hire you to a registrar post or a specialty doctor post, and your CV, it's clear that you don't know the difference between short course and a university PG SAT or a PG diploma. Why would I hire you into a post that means you anesthetize our patients, you decide a huge amount of things? So it's common for now. There's a small role where you can put the exams that you've gone halfway, but it's very common that you see people, in trying to fill CVs, it now come across like they don't understand the difference between short courses, university diploma, or they don't understand the difference between an audit and a research. So when you are building your CV, if this is something you struggle with, of course, get someone to look at it so that they guide you and you know which place to fill. The next thing is gain UK clinical experience. This is already very popular in the US. Most people that go to march in the US, they go and spend time, doing a decent amount of observership. Cost is a challenge here, but I strongly recommend that if you can come and get, clinical attachment experience, it's going to be good for you so that you understand the system, you understand the hidden curriculum, you understand, for instance, what electronic health record. Sometimes you can do it through, clinical research experience. The other thing to show is commitment to the UK system. And what do we mean? Now, while you can, of course, get to the GMC register with your PLAB, someone that does additional things like the Royal College exam from outside is showing commitment to the UK system. So two doctors, similar profile. Let's say both of them want to come and work in the UK in surgery. One has passed PLAB and has passed MRCOG or MRCS Part A. If I'm interviewing both, already I'm biased, or not even biased, I'm just realistic that, this person at least has read around the diseases that is more common in the UK system. When I came here, in general surgery, you see a lot of IBD patients operating for IBD, diverticular disease, and all of that. Of course, in Nigeria, you hardly see IBD or diverticular disease. Either people have it, we're not picking it up, or so. So that's one of the things. The other thing, so to consider strongly starting one of the Royal College exams and passing them. It will boost your chance. The second thing is try and do the things that they are interested in the UK. So demonstrate things like audit. So while you are back home or wherever you are, do some clinical audit. Demonstrate teaching and have evidence for it. Demonstrate research, have evidence for it. Demonstrate presentation and have evidence for it. Number 6 is network. It's not very nice that you are coming to the UK, you have no real clinical network. There's no consultant, specialty doctors that you regularly communicate with. Yeah, because part of the hidden curriculum is people like to employ people they get along with. It's the same rule everywhere. Of course, while you go through the process, once someone has networked with you, they have an indirect idea of your skill, your personality, which drama you bring to them when they bring you in their team. So it's very important to network, join IMT. So how do you specifically network? The easiest is you should try and join the UK professional bodies in your area of interest. So if you are interested in surgery, for instance, become an affiliate member of the Royal College of Surgeons, any of them. If you are interested in medicine, do the same thing. Anesthesia, do the same thing. That way, if you can also, attend their conferences, meet people face to face, see how you feel about it, especially for those that have gone far with their career. See whether, coming over is what is in your best interest. Avoid, JAPA syndrome, which is a knee-jerk reaction. Because in my experience, regardless of wherever you go, the first 5 years is the year of storm. So I know people don't like to hear this, but whether you go to the US, you go to Canada, the first 5 years is the year of storm. After that 5 years is the year of norm. Now, why is that? And if you look at most countries, there's hardly a Western country that you get permanent residency earlier than 3 years. So it's important to know this. So if you can have more of it, it's a long game rather than a short game, especially if you can. Otherwise, you may be overwhelmed. So, but my understanding is people attend this webinar so that we can tell them from our experience. So the first 5 years is the year of storm. We are trying to understand renting. Renting is difficult, driving license, passing the exam, getting a job, and learning the bus system, the train system, the cultural differences. Before 2 years has passed. Then figuring out what's your next move. Because sometimes you have a year job, and then before you are trying to look for the next, and most people would have taken a substantial loan to come in. So it may take you a year or 2 years. So your first 5 years is likely going to be mostly storm. Towards the end of the 5 years, maybe the last 2 years, you are now getting to norm. So after the 5 years, things are beginning to calm down. So it's a long game. If you play a long game, in my experience, you are more likely to succeed, at least if you are a professional. If your body, you maybe are a very strong person or someone that is used to village life or hard things, fine. You can come in German. But for most professional settings, you need to have a long game because a lot of the time, in my experience, because I've been in academia and the NHS, they need to even watch you for a bit, before you gain enough respect within the community for people to be more keen to say, let's offer him this or that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I think I've dealt with this significantly, I believe. I think we can go to next. Okay, I think the only thing is so again, UK, stay resilient. So don't give up. I've talked about the first 5 years, maybe the year of storm. So you would notice that you're always fixing this or that. But what you would find is in your first 5 years, in my experience, you learn so much. Like the amount of skill you gain is extraordinary, whatever you do. Whether if you come to general surgery in this country, the volume of operation, it's a small number, but the volume that you'll be involved with will significantly improve your skills. I've talked about network. Then the other thing people come late to the party is start practicing interviews. Start reviewing your CV before you even start applying. Why? So that you don't make the mistake and learn from it. You avoid making the mistake. So that's just the additional thing I would add here. Next slide, please. So there's again a lot of future outside the NHS for whatever reason. So there's private healthcare, they employ too. I think for this ones, you probably want to come and get a year or two of NHS experience and you can move to them. So you have HCA, London Clinic, One Welbeck, Wellington. There are many of them. Also, once you've had NHS experience, you can move to health insurance and medical assessment. Here you have health assessors, which assess people with disability, people that are coming to join health insurance. You have underwriters. If you have been in the NHS, you know you need indemnity cover. So the underwriters help the indemnity companies to decide, how much you should pay. Once again, you've gotten UK experience, NHS experience. You can be a clinical trial physician. You can be principal investigator or sub-investigator. Like if you are like me, you like academia, you can also get a clinical lecturer role, a clinical fellow, a researcher as well. You can work in public health, as a public health doctor. Digital medicine and telemedicine is top there. Once you spend some time in the country, you can be an advisor to this company. You can invest in this company. You can be a telemedicine doctor, especially for GPs. In regulatory and governance role, when you have a lot of experience, you can be a GMC advisor. Medical legal sector, you can be expert witness. There's again another role even within the NHS called the medical examiner. So for those that are interested, you can do the Royal College of Pathology, medical examiner. You don't need to do any training. You pass the exam. I think it's 2 of them. It's quite short. You do, and I think it's cheap. You can be a medical examiner, which means you essentially just review the case note when there is, I think, mortality or morbidity in a trust and then there's also, then pharma and life sciences. You can be a medical science liaison, which basically you help them train people and market their product and lead their medical education. And of course, why not? Health journalism, writing and content creation. You can work in the legacy media like Sanjay Gupta, podcasts. You have a lot of them, YouTube and the rest. So these are all things you can do. Once you're in the UK, you've spent time in the NHS, you can do this part-time in the first instance, and later you can pursue them on a full-time basis. Next slide, please. Yes, so I just gave an example here about some of the areas. So entrepreneurship is something that I think maybe doctors neglect, which is fine. But I put it in my talk because there's a lot of opportunities. So there's a lot of opportunities for those that are looking in this area. So you can have health tech. If you can code, you can work with people. Exam prep, there are quite big companies doing this. BaloSegha is one of them. You have Kaplan. you have on exam, you have past tests. So you have a couple of them, medical, legal, insurance, and all of this. You can do them full-time or part-time. Why are people doing this? Burnout and workload pressure. Sometimes you want autonomy. You want you want the opportunity to innovate, financial freedom, passive income. You also want to, leverage your medical knowledge in other sectors. Okay, next slide, please. So there are notable entrepreneurs, you have in the public domain. So you have Anushka, he's founded the health tech and digital transformation leader. Vinay is quite popular as GP and health entrepreneur. I think he's the same person that leads YouTube medical education. You have Caroline Walker, you have Ayan Panja, you have Owen Davis and Dr. Anas Nadi. So things to consider, look at the GMC guidelines so that you don't breach it. Also have a look at your contract, exclusivity. Generally, anything you do that doesn't, I can't give you specific advice, but as long as it doesn't cause conflict of interest with your NHS, and I think you have to declare it. Then, of course, improve your time management, then business skills. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are other within the NHS opportunities. So the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program is there for you to also participate in. And then if you come up with anything within the NHS scheme, you can get to patent it. So it could be anything from electronic medical record to vaccines to medical device, anything. There are also useful resources, Medics Money, Doctorpreneur, and then medical school startups, and then startup incubators. All these are things to consider on the entrepreneur line at various steps in your career. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is basically so that what I preach, I practice. So I have my own medical education company, large academy in the UK. I started that since 2022. Back in Nigeria, I'm in a number of things. One of them is fish farming. And so this is my, I think, 20,000 capacity fish farm somewhere in around the middle belt in Nigeria. So this is to say you can do your clinical practice and pursue whatever you want. My cousin does a lot of real estate and she does it very well. But again, you can also focus only on your clinical job. It comes in all shades and sizes. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is again my fish feed mill. This can produce around 20 bags of fish feed per day. Again, these are the feeds that they've made. I don't work there. I just use my remote skills to be able to interface with the staff and everyone. So again, these are all the possibilities that you can do as a doctor in addition to your clinical practice, or you can also focus on your clinical practice alone. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you everyone for listening. This is where we get to open mic and yes, questions, please.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Beautiful presentation. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So without wasting time, like he said, this is a time to ask questions. I can see that there's a whole lot of so if you have any questions, has anybody dropped any questions? Okay, no question yet. If you have any question at all, if you want to unmute your mic and ask, you can do that. If you want to drop it in the chat, you can do that, whichever way you want to do it. just go ahead to do it. It's a free one for all to do that. Nobody yet. So like we said, it's a free one. This is an open mic now. You're allowed to ask questions or clarity of anything. Please feel free to say what you have to say.
Okay, I think someone wanted a bit of more elaborate on the UK style CV. So I think, let me see whether I have an example. If I don't know if BaloSegha, do you have an example we can talk through the UK style CV?
Example of a CV that we have already.
Yes.
I'm not sure we can pull that up now. We actually do. Shahid, do you have anyone ready with you? We usually look at CVs too regularly because we have BaloSegha Edu that does that, if you know what I mean.
Okay,
So
fine.
Not at the moment.
not at the moment. Yeah.
I'll just talk about it briefly. So usually for a clinical NHS CV, you want to have the top that has like your address, so where you live, your phone number. Then you want to go to a part that has an short introduction about you, what you are looking for instance, Nigerian trained MRCP successful, looking for middle grade role in the NHS in cardiology. Then after that, you don't need to put your date of birth necessarily if you don't want to. But if you must, you can put, if you like, you can put your date of birth. Things like where you are from, what local government is unnecessary in Western CVs. So the next step would be the most important licensure, for instance. So you can have a segment where you have licensure. So that's where your GMC registration and how long, your MDCN registration and how long you've had it. Then you have qualifications. So you can have academic and clinical qualification. So once you have there, you have MBBS, MSc, all of that, professional qualification or clinical communication qualifications, whatever clinical qualifications you have, you put them there. Then you put work experience. You start with the clinical work experience. So what you need to do in the work experience is try and mirror your post with what it is in the UK. So let me just make it simple. So FY1 and NYSC is foundation. So what you have as house job and NYSC is technically foundation. Or so foundation year 2 is SHO. So you can call your NYSC F2 or you can call it SHO. Now, what you have as junior residency in Nigeria, it's more like SHO, if you like, or you can call it CT1, CT2, or ST1, ST2 equivalent. So that if someone here is looking, they can have an idea of what's your skill. So usually once you've passed part 1 or in your 3rd year of residency, that's ST3, or medical officer, whatever it is you are doing. So that's now your ST3 plus. So that's how you mirror it. And you mirror it so that someone reviewing. So once you've mirrored your experience, you put publications or audit, presentations like that. References, you can put them, but usually UK, I think by law or something, they towards the time, so they can do it 2 ways. They can ask for your references before you come for your interview if they want to hire you quickly. You get me? Or you, but the more standard thing is they would send your references out after you've been offered the job. So that's roughly what the CV would look like. So let me quickly go to how, okay, you want to add something, BaloSegha?
Yeah. So before we go to the next set of questions, I think Stephen raised his hand earlier on.
Okay.
I don't know if Stephen is still there. You can unmute and ask your question before I read out the questions on the chat box. Stephen, are you still there, please? Okay,
yes,
maybe
thank
still.
you very much.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, thank you very much once again, Mr. Jonathan, for the session. So I just have a question about you mentioned the real college exams. I just wanted to give an opinion because right now we have a lot of and some of us now still back in Nigeria, we invested in one state, to join that sort of few stock months on ends without a job. So, in your own opinion, how much of a boost do you think to be if one was to further invest for the exams like the real college? Because for my own sort of research, they're quite expensive, more expensive. And I mean that one exams.
Okay, so the exams are quite unfortunately, like with medicine, almost all of the licensure keep asking, you need to pay. They are both hidden and unhidden costs. In terms of what advantage it will give you, I can speak for surgery. So if we have, let me just make it simple. If we have a post, let's say an SHO in general surgery, and someone with the same qualification, the same experience, one of them has GMC registration and via PLAB. The other one has GMC registration via PLAB, but they've passed MRCS Part A. Let me push the question back to you. Who would you first shortlist for an interview? Hello? Can you hear me?
Stephen, if you have communication challenges, network, just type your questions or answers or anything. Because I think there's a network issue.
Yeah, you have the same candidates with similar experience. One has an extra UK qualification. The standard practice is the person with that UK qualification is likely going to be shortlisted, at least to interview level. So he has that advantage. So in what I know from word on the street is there's a bias. Why? Because the people doing the shortlisting, they are royal. I mean, like BaloSegha now is Royal College of Anesthetists, anesthesiologists. He will not just say South Africa are shortlisting. I don't know, get me. And then this person, just stay there, they drive. So because one, he knows the curriculum of the Royal College of Anesthetists. Like I know what you would have covered in MRCS in terms of knowledge and things like that. So it gives you a boost. What number? It gives you, are going to get more shortlisting for interview for sure. When you come to interview, you have to prove yourself, isn't it? So by that time, of course, the question they ask you, okay, if patient is unstable and they are this age, they have this comorbidity, and the surgeons want to operate, what are your options for anesthesia? So that it will not matter. So once everybody has got into interview, you get me, it would not matter so much. The other thing that helps with decision making is what they are looking for in the role. For instance, if the department is looking to get someone that will be specialty doctor, the one that is there is about to leave or wants to retire or the role will be empty, they may be looking for someone they can easily train. So if you have already done your exams or part of it, they know that once you come, once they support you, you get used to their system, they can put you in their long-term plan. So that's another thing. The third thing is the way they write the rules, HR. They write the rules of employment based on UK qualifications first. So for instance, it's extremely difficult for you. It's easier for you to get a locum consultant, Caesar consultant, whatever consultant in surgery, if you have FRCS, because the assumption is your knowledge or FRC in anesthesia, FRCA. The assumption is that you have similar knowledge like any other consultant in the UK. So I don't know if this answered the question, Stephen. In terms of the money matter, I cannot give you direct, I can't give you direct advice on the cost implication. What I can only tell you is, I don't know, the exams are always costing money. I'll just be honest with you. Yes, but
Sure.
so I
Thank you
think
very
maybe
much
we
for
take
that.
the other question. Yes, of course.
Thank
You
you
are.
for that. Stephen, if you have any other question, just send it in the chat and we'll take it further. Because of time, there are two questions, so I'll read them as fast as I can, but with clarity. Oluwaseun has a three-in-one question. It says, how short can my clinical attachment be for a consultant role? Of course, for job and cost constraint, how do you effectively network at college conferences, being a stranger of sorts at the meeting? Yeah, so it's a three-in-one question.
Yes. So the first thing is, for a consultant job, is a balance, because consultants, you're highly independent. If you ask for too long a clinical attachment, they may be thinking, how comfortable are you with the role? So, but I think somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks. But I've seen consultants that have come from Spain. Some of them have done as long as 12 weeks. It all depends on from where you are coming from, and then which system, which type of job. If you are familiar with the UK system, and the way the drama is, then fine. But I think for consultant role, you want to consider between 2 to 4 weeks. So you know what is expected of you. You know the admin, because you may be given the role of educational supervisor, clinical supervisor. You may be lead on governance. You have a couple of administrative roles in addition to your role. The next question is, how do you effectively?
How do you use clinical attachment? Oh, sorry, are you still in the Seun's question?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead, sorry.
So the next question is, how do you confront? So there are a couple of ways. There's something called meet and greet UK tradition. The easiest way would be if you have someone you're a little bit used to, then of course that person introduces you to them, and they can do that via email or face-to-face. So I think start with the Nigerian group. There's a number of people in Mansag, depending on your specialty. Then they can introduce you to someone within their network. That may reduce the curve. But I'll tell you what I've done when I've been everywhere, America, Canada, whatever. Again, meet and greet, quite professional. Don't approach anyone needy, because one of the mistakes our people do is you make the interaction about, I'm interacting, I need a job. No, you keep your mind open. I mean, this conference, I think you presented X, you comment on their presentation. You go online, look at what they've done. Have specific, or is there, I'd like to keep in touch, you know, I've read your work, and then you communicate. Before you know, you have a friendship that is on email. It improves. And I'll give you the instance. I emailed the current director of trauma, London, Professor Karim Bruhai. I was living in Nigeria at the time. I think it was 7 years ago. And when I was in Lagos, in that Lagos traffic, we did a Zoom call with him and he really looked for, but because just on email, I'd interacted with him for close to a year. So that's how the networking goes. So it's not something that you come and say, oh, I need this in your trust. Do you have a role? No. So once you are interacting, you get me there. When you think the interaction is mature enough where you can ask whether there are opportunities, then of course do that. So that's one way. So meet and greet, they always have meet and greet. You say hi, you tell them about yourself, you tell them about background, you comment on the work, you ask your question, you get email. They are quite big on emails, not phone number, at least in my experience. And you do email back and forth, and you'll be surprised where it can get to. So that's how, and then use Mansag, because at least it's a little bit easier if BaloSegha emails somebody in anesthesia and say, oh, hi, this person is interested in, you know, neuraxial block for pain, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the guy may say, fine, send me his CV. So that's really that. And then the more meetings you attend, the better. Now with remote, the more you become visible. So I'll just go to the next question, if that's okay.
Yeah, so the next one will be from Fernanda. First of all, he or she thanked you. It says, how can I use the clinical attachment experience to improve my job application on track or NHS Scotland?
So understand something. The purpose of the clinical attachment is to improve the gap I've talked about. So one of the things is you want to demonstrate good knowledge of course, put it under your CV. In addition, go a step further. If you did it under BaloSegha, is consultant in anesthesia, what hospital, state it. Why? So that if someone knows BaloSegha, they can informally ask for his opinion. You know, what was, oh, amazing person. So that's the thing to do. So you put it in your CV, put the consultant that you've done it under. Also itemize the things you actually did during the clinical attachment. What did you do specifically? That's on the paper side of things. But when you are in the clinical attachment, for instance, understand how ED is structured. Because if you take ED in Nigeria, it's just ED. Here you have CDU, you have SACRU, you have rafting, you have resource, you have majors. Now, if you are going for an ED job and you make them understand that what patient will be at what time, you are more likely to be hired compared to somebody that think ED is one thing. So those are the things. So as you are doing, itemize the skills you've gained in the clinical attachment. And when you go to do it, make it about skill, not tick box, especially in the beginning. Make it about you are going to do this clinical attachment to fill in this gap. You know, the name of the consultants and the things you achieved. Okay, I hope that answers it.
Beautiful. Good. So the next question is, I was going to say that, but Shay has answered about which is, I'll just read it out. From David, talked about, I have lots of interview and they keep putting me in the waiting list. I have 2 more interviews coming up. Please, what should I do? Now, Jonathan, I said it earlier, CV is very important. We do a lot of CV reviews. And that's why Shaya has put the email address there where you can email us and let us know. We'll give advice. Again, in terms of this job thing, Jonathan talked about clinical attachment. Shaya is a consultant in, you know, anesthesia and everything. My wife, Victoria, she's here too. She's a consultant in psychiatry. Well, I'm not a medical consultant, I'm a business consultant, so you can't come and meet me if you know what I mean. But we have helped a lot of people as BaloSegha. We keep helping. If you need any help, just send us an email. We will give you the necessary advice. He talked about links and everything. We will do the best we can or the little we can, if you know what I mean. So if you have issues with your with jobs, interviews, and co, more often than not, like Jonathan has said, it is first your CV. It's first your CV. We have also seen, like he has said, some very, excuse for my French, we have seen outrageous CVs that you wonder, look, are you sure this is a CV or you copied and pasted newspaper, if you know what I mean? So just send us your information and we will take it from there, okay? I hope that has helped you, which I believe it will. Dare is raising his hand. I can see his hand. You can
Yes,
unmute your
please fire.
mic and ask your question, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. OVERSATURATED, Dr. Jonathan Aja. That was a very good presentation. I really, really appreciate it. And to BaloSegha for organizing this. Okay, so I've had a couple of instructions and helpful tips as to how to get into the UK system. However, I just would like to ask you with respect to um, the kind of, let me use the word attachment. I think that was the language Dr. Aja mentioned. That the different attachments or different roles taking and ticking the boxes. For some of us here in Nigeria now, there are so many activities we get involved in, and then training. Some we train, sometimes they organize training discussions and some of those things. But in what way do we get them, as evidence? Is it in Google Form, or how can it be substantial? Such that even when we do all of this, or are there ways by which the ones that we've done in the past that were not recorded that can be reclaimed, or that one has gone into, thin air? So, and then so those are the questions. I don't know if it's clear enough. Thank you.
Okay. So I think it's a good question you've asked. The generally UK medical work, you need to be narrow-minded, and I'll explain what I mean. So if you are gunning for something don't gun for a role in more than 3 specialties, and try and marry them together. I've done a talk and I explained this. So for instance, if your background is look at what's your background in Nigeria. It's very strong: internal medicine, psychiatry, what's related, maybe PEDS. So try and tailor yourself strongly in that direction. If your background is general surgery, ONG, ENT, urology, try and tailor yourself. Now, understand, so let's say you are in Nigeria and you already you are very comfortable with decision making and things like that. Then you can say, at what level do I want to come, registrar or not? Now, once you've decided fairly well, let me go back to the training you are doing. You now want to know, this training I'm doing, is this short training? Yeah. Is there a professional clinical qualification? Yeah. Is it an academic postgraduate qualification? Is this clinical audit? Is this research? Now, you must also understand what falls in what. So if they are short courses, they are not bad, but they don't carry a lot of employment currency. Because let's say they want to employ now someone in anesthesia. The consultants are looking for who will make them work less, period. You want to come into the UK, you are looking for work, you feed your family, things. People and the system want to look for, fine. Once this man settled, can he run some straightforward list? Yeah, so that we can open more theaters. can he run the straightforward CPOD list so that the more experienced consultant anesthetist can do the PEDS list, or can do vascular list, or can do neurosurgery list? So once you tailor what you want to do, you now want to say, fine, I'm interested in internal medicine. You know that if you pass your part 1, at least, even though it's not the same with here, they know that, oh, this one has gone through at least a decent number of. The next thing is have good record keeping. Yeah. So if you do an audit, did you publish it? If you publish it, where? If you do an audit, did you present it? When you present it, ask for a certificate and keep in your portfolio. So what you are asking for is a portfolio. So I think BaloSegha and team would work maybe on portfolio. So in the UK, portfolio is very important. So you put the portfolio in different aspects, but try and tailor it and target 3 or 4 specialties. That's what I would advise, preferably 3. And then you can be filling in the gaps. I don't know if I've managed to answer your question.
Oh yes, amazing. Apparently I'm in anesthesia, so I think I'll be able to link up with BaloSegha more after this discussion. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Beautiful. If you need more details, you or anyone on anything, Shaya has just posted our social media platform links, so you can just chat us up, send us an email if you want. Let us know if you need anything. We will do the little or the much we can. We've been doing that, and God help us to continue doing that. Like we said, information about CV review, we do that a lot. Information about jobs placements. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. This video will be posted in a few days' time, and previous videos, loads and loads of videos we've been doing since February 2022. All right, they are there as well. We'll just take these one last 3-in-1 questions before we round up, because it's already 8 o'clock. Okay. Dr. Jude has said, number 1, does frequency or volume of job applications impact favorably on chances of being shortlisted more than the quality of applications? 2, is it true that applying directly on the trust website improves one's chances more than via Track? 3, aside Track, are there other websites for job applications? Yes, there are. Well, let Jonathan say one or two things.
Let me just quickly. So the first one would be generally no. I think sometimes that's where we talk about the grit. You need to keep going. What do I recommend? This is my personal recommendation. If you follow my tailored approach, you would almost know that you'll be shortlisted for interview, because there's a pattern to these things. If I apply to a job in anesthesia, what are they calling to me to speak to me? There's nothing to speak. I don't know if you get me. So it follows skill, especially at registrar level. You get it follows. So there's a pattern to these things. So if you are around middle grade, you have experience, I would say follow quality over quantity. If you are more around SHO level, you've not specialized in anything, or you've not specifically done specialized work, then you may want to go on volume. Applying on not really. Eventually, all of them will come. So some trusts don't directly, they will still route you back to Track. Some trusts don't participate in Track. Was my experience. I applied on Track, they invited me. I applied directly, they invited me. So both works. You get me? But it's all about fill those gaps so that they need you. And the question you must have in your mind, know this if you are a registrar, they want to employ people that will make them work less, not more. They want people that will help them reduce and control the workload. It's not more than that. So anything you can do to make yourself that person. That's it. I think I've answered the third question. And again, keep coming, keep interacting, use the resources. Let me say this as finally. There's one of the things with our people, we don't engage too much. That's just the difference. Engage with the resources. There are so many of us now in this country, GPO, everything. Engage. You get. Don't stay quietly. Engage. Once you have the information that you need, you go very far. Like I've been in the UK half a decade. I've held every post. Every. In Nigeria, nobody will allow you move this fast. I can guarantee you that. If you like, you get. So why? If you be involved, engage. We have a lot of all of these good resources on BaloSegha. Engage. Use the resources that your own people have made because they understand your unique needs. They understand your problem. Subscribe to it. Some of it is not that expensive. Once you engage, the journey becomes way easier because you are informed. Except there's any other question, I would like to thank BaloSegha and team for
Thank
inviting
you
me.
so
It's been a
much.
lovely evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. We really appreciate you coming. Even though we're running up soon, we should just stay on the call and we'll take it from there. For everyone that has contributed, that has attended today, thank you so much. There's a lot we do in BaloSegha, like Jonathan has also said, and if you can see on the chat, we've posted a lot of links. One of our subsidiaries is BaloSegha Edu. All right, we have posted the links of some of the things we've done. We had a talk about 2 years ago on medical legal, like we said, very, very informative. We had to bring a lawyer in, and it was very, 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 very eventful. I don't know how many varies, and people are still getting today. We have a set of courses we do. Some are free, many are free, some are not free. The ones that are not free are token, not very expensive at all, to be honest, compared to what you find outside. So you can have them. You can check our website. If you need anything about education, CV by education series, send us an email, balosega@gmail.com. If you have general questions, send us an email, balosega@yahoo.com. Just go on the chat box and we'll see all the links to all the packages you need. Should you need anything, just let us know ASAP. We will help. We also do audit courses. We have a lot of courses that we do, audit courses, medical legal, etc., that will help you a great deal. Some of the questions, or many of these questions you've asked today, are very good. We have answers to them. I'll be more than happy to take it further. So till we meet again next month will be April. It will be the usual question and answer. It's usually the last Sunday of the month, last Sunday. And we're now at the same time with Nigeria now. So 6 o'clock UK will be 6 o'clock Nigerian time till end of October again, where we change back to the winter season. All right. So next month will be the last Sunday of the month for the Q&A, and we'll hope to see you then. Thank you so very much to Dr. Aja, Jonathan. Thank you so much. What an insightful presentation today. Guys, thank you all. Have a great Sunday and cross over to the new month. And God bless you all. Thank you very much. Jonathan, just wait for
Thank
a
you.
while. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.